Welcome. Your art is a spell, and it will change your life and the world around you. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Your Art is a Spell. I'm so excited for today's conversation with the wonderful, multidimensional Reina Prado, who is the founder of Healing Queen and the Healing Queen School of Sacred Alchemy. As a spiritual guide, love conscious coach, and holistic energy practitioner, Reina helps heart seekers and mystics reconnect with love and self-trust through love limpias, ancestral healing, and energy work. As we will get into in this conversation, Reina is a multi-talented artist and healer, energy worker who shows up in a variety of ways, from writing to performance and even food. We will get into all of that in this wonderful conversation. So without further ado, here is my conversation with Reina Prado. Hi, so happy to have you on Your Art is a Spell, Reina. It is such a gift to be able to connect with you and to share about you and all the divine ways that you show up in the world and all the incredible offerings you have and also wisdom you share. And I just am so grateful to welcome you to Your Art is a Spell and would love for you to share just a little bit about who you are and how you're showing up today.
Oh, Edgar, it's so beautiful to be here with you. And I'm so excited to be on your podcast. My name is Reina Prado, and I'm a Healing Queen and Healing Queen School of Sacred Alchemy. Today, how am I showing up? Well, definitely happier because it's sunny and bright out. So the mood is elevated.
Yeah, feeling that, feeling the sunshine coming in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And, the day that we're recording, it's a magical number day, so you can't beat that.
Yeah, it's definitely the 333 portal.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, I'm so happy you're here, and I'd love for us to uh, talk a little bit about the incredible ways that you show up in the world and what you've been working on. I know that you've been working on a lot of incredible projects, and yeah, I'm excited for you to share a little bit about how you've been showing up in the world recently.
Wow. So a lot that's happening at the moment is actually I've been working on a book. It's a book that's been in me for some years, but this year I decided I'm going to focus on it. And actually, it's two books. One is a poetry manuscript called Under My Skin, and then the book project. At the moment, I'm calling it Amate, which translates to love yourself. And it's a book of essays and really just kind of exploring that self-love journey that I've gone through and how this has also shown up in my practice, attending to clients who are seeking more of a deeper connection with themselves. Often when I share that I do love limpias, it's so curious to me how people automatically associate the love limpia with relationship, which is beautiful. And also, when we clear out what's blocking the space of the heart, that we actually bring in more vitality into our whole energetic system. And this is something that I've been very fortunate to be of service. I used to be a college professor for 21 years. And in the midst of transitioning, continuing on that career path and doing my holistic energy practice, there came a time where I had to make a choice. And I didn't go into it out of this place of urgency. I actually really gave it time and space. And in doing so, it was this whole process of just being with that question. What would it look like? What would it feel like just to really do this full time? Because I had been asking, wouldn't it be wonderful? That's where the spell comes in, right? Wouldn't it be wonderful?
Right, right.
And universe is like, yeah, what? Let's make it happen. And then it's like, wait a second, that is not what I expected. And yet it unfolded in the most magical way. I was already at a space in Pasadena that I was renting. I was renting the practitioner room,
Mhm.
and it coincided that the other private space in that same studio was open, was available. And when I committed within the first month or two that I was there, I had my rent paid for the rest of the year.
Wow. For the rest of the year. Wow.
So that was like, okay, we can do this. So I was there for a year and a half, and then, COVID hit. and
Yeah.
everything changed for everybody. And it was really interesting because I had to really attend to, what do I do? How do I do it? And not be so fixated on, I need to see you in person.
Yeah.
And as much as clients were ready to only want to see me in person, it was really like, no, actually, we can really do this. And that's where I grew a lot. I expanded a lot and connected with folks in New
Mm.
York. I'm still with them, Minka, Brooklyn, and also folks in Massachusetts. It was the Rainbow Soul Collective. It's now defunct, but I'm still good friends with the practitioner who established it, Grace Harrington Murdoch, and it's been just like this ongoing journey. What's so beautiful about the work that I get to do is that it is very creative,
Yeah.
because I'm, creating content for either clients or workshops, or for training programs that I do, practitioner training programs. So I'm always in this process of creativity, and I think that's been the blessing, is that um I've been able to really step into that space. That creation is
Right.
not just something of an output, it's a conversation that I'm having, like, either with, an aspect of myself or my guides or even my ancestors.
I'm really hearing how there was that moment that you shared when you were still teaching that it was almost like that little whisper, right? Or that moment when you're like, could this be possible? Could I live a life in a different way? And I know that that's something that a lot of people either think sometimes or wonder, or it might feel really scary. I know it was for me when I first took that big leap of moving into a life that is centered more around your creativity, around your practices. And so I'm like definitely loving you sharing that. You're seeing creative practice as a conversation, and just so thrilled to hear about your books, that you're working on books now. And I'm just like imagining that, there might be people who are wondering, like, how it is that you've gotten to this place, like to be able to feel so clear about your creative practice, and to be able to have these like small inklings of ideas, like a book coming in, and then to start to be able to like actualize it and bring it into form.
Wow. I wouldn't, I, oh, I don't even know how to answer that question. Well, I'll answer it this way. I let go of it needing to be a particular way.
Mm, yeah,
And in so doing, it has opened up other abilities, maybe, or other ways of doing what I do. And so a specific example will be like, I am a performance artist, I am a poet. And, when the question would come, what do you do? I would often just say I'm an artist, because I didn't want to say I was a college professor, because that was just, that's the work I did, but it wasn't who I was. And there was something I read by Don Miguel Ruiz. And speaking of the Toltec cosmology or philosophy, that we're all artists, because we're all here to create, and to not only to create things, but we're here to create beauty. And part of that creation of beauty is that we're here to amplify that vibration of love. And in creating, when I did my first chapbook, and then 20 years later published a book of reflection prompts that were inspired by guided experiences that I recorded for my clients, called Spring into Love. I remember the marketing manager at the publishing press was like, why did it take you 20 years? And there was this moment of like, oh, that just really like, yeah, like,
mm,
and I got
yeah,
caught up in the timeline. And then I I took a moment. I was like, well, it's not that it took me 20 years, it's that this work was ready to come out now.
Yeah.
Maybe it would have come out even before that, but I wasn't there yet. And so part of that, to answer the question is like also acknowledging, where are you? Where
Yeah.
are you on the journey? In sacred practices of indigenous communities, particularly here on Turtle Island, we have the notion of the medicine wheel. So where are you stepping into the medicine wheel? Right. And sometimes, if we think about it in terms of modern, quote unquote modern, Joseph Campbell talked about it as the hero's journey. That's a medicine wheel. The hero's journey
Right.
is a medicine wheel. So
Yeah.
where are you on that wheel? Where do you come in? Right. And so it's acknowledging, where do you come in? And so another framework that maybe can be resonant or click with the audience is your astrology, right? Your natal chart. You come in a particular way on the wheel. And so how do you make the most of that? And then what's so beautiful is that we grow and we shift and we change, and our chart will change, right? Our natal chart is still the baseline blueprint, but then things build on that and it spirals, right? And so that's what creativity is that the moment you get to connect, whether it's through a craft, through an idea, it's allowing that to just spiral and have its like upward movement, so to speak. It's
Yeah.
growth, right? But you're still the root. You're still the foundation.
I'm really feeling the through line of love in so much of what you're sharing. And, I know that you work so much with love. You brought up your love limpias, and you brought up this chapbook, and that, there's so much connected to love. And I'm really thinking of the deep, deep acceptance and honoring of process and also of time, knowing that it does take time to get somewhere sometimes. And also that as you're naming, we come in with certain ways of being or certain stories or certain paths that we need to go down. And sometimes they take us somewhere, and it might take us a moment to return to something or for something to formalize or to become something, right? And to hear that it took 20 years, like that, even though that was shocking for like a marketing person, like, as you're saying for you, like it makes sense in terms of your path and like where you had to go. And yeah, I'm curious, with you bringing up love, like I'd love for you to share a little bit about love limpias in case someone doesn't know what a love limpia is. And also just would love to hear about your relationship to love, since it seems like it's a big part of your practice.
The love Olympia came out organically. It was one of those moments again, in that moment of transition of like, oh wait, what do I do? What do I offer? How do I, present my practice when I was going into it full time? And I was in this, I think it was like one of those free workshops on like, writing your book proposal, something to that
Yeah.
effect. And I was thinking about Santa Perversa. Now, Santa Perversa is this entity that's come through me. She's the patron saint of everything erotic, sensual, and love. And when I wrote the poem to Santa Perversa, 1998, there's a prayer in the poem. And I was like, okay, cool. And then people would tell me how they would pray to Santa Perversa. Like they had my chapbook, pray to Santa Perversa, and things
Yeah.
are happening in their relationships that were amazing. I was like, wow, really? You prayed to Santa Perversa? That is so cool. So it was, the poem itself had a life of its own, but really, in hindsight, I'm like, oh, wait, this is an energy that came through me. And I named her Santa Perversa. Something maybe that is her name. I don't know. But that's how it came out. And when I started to embody her and imagine her, like, the kind of the imagery from like, Mexican or Latin American Catholicism with, ornate dresses and the petitions pinned on it. The performance that came from that was Take a Piece of My Heart. And what I remember vividly is inviting folks to write their love petition and folks not knowing how to articulate that. And that really stuck with me. that when asked, what is the love that you want? Individuals sometimes have a hard time naming it.
Right.
And when I was reflecting on all of those experiences, I was like, right, I do love limpias. That's exactly what I do. And so it became this very organic experience of how it emerged, how I developed, and then also understanding that there are those in my lineage who also did this work.
Right.
And, you know, maybe they were curanderex, maybe they were, something else. But there was this knowing that this is coming from a deep practice. And so in many ways it was this remembering of that. I may not have the ABCs of how they did it, but I'm also knowing I have the capacity to do it for this moment, in this time, in this particular way. And that is what helped, you know, the cultivation of the love limpia. So that clearing of the heart space, right? Limpias are these energetic clearings. And so when we tend to the heart, we're really tending to this vitality center of our soul space. And we have, in the Mexica cosmology, we understand it to be the crown, the heart, and the liver, but also the joints, right? And so when we fortify this heart space, we're actually understanding a little bit more about what our soul's expression is wanting to do.
Yeah.
And, going back to thinking about like the astrology, in reading, the sacred calendar, there are the signs of that placement between your crown, your heart, and your liver. And it's telling you this is your makeup. This is your vitality makeup, right? Like our top three, so to speak, sun, moon, and rising.
Right.
So when the love limpias emerged and I really stepped into that, it just helped me trust that even if I quote unquote didn't know, I was going to be guided. And I am guided. And it's like, okay, here we go. And so each session started to evolve, where I started to notice different themes and what people were presenting. And so then that became information for me to create like a workshop series. But I think also for me, love has always been a part of me, aside from having serious Venusian placements with a Libra sun and a Taurus moon. But also that
Yeah.
at the time that I was born, I was born in the Venus hour. Time that I was born. So it's like, okay, so, she's with me. That is a part of me. It's part of my makeup. But yeah, I love love. And, for me, it's understanding that beyond the intimacy that can be practiced, with a lover, with family, with friends, colleagues, that when we really tune into that frequency of love, things start to open up in ways that become really magical and even mystical.
Yeah, I'm like really struck with your journey with Santa Perversa. And, I'm almost like seeing it as this like moment you had in your life where I don't know if she came to you, if you beckoned her. Like there's like this way that like you almost like forged or conjured something, right? Or it came to you, they came to you, right? And just thinking about that moment, and because I'm like imagining there might be some people who are listening to this and might feel stuck or might feel like they don't know how to tap into their creativity or into their heart space, right? And just thinking of that like bridge that was built, right? In bringing in this part of yourself, this aspect of yourself, or this entity, right? This being that people are praying to, that is also answering petitions. Like that to me is something that is so interesting and exciting. that there can be archetypes, there can be beings, there can be angels, right? There can be saints that can come to us. And I'm curious if you want to share a little bit about that process or what you've learned in working with Santa Perversa for, now it's been a little like over a couple of decades, right? Or
Yeah, right.
yeah,
98.
yeah.
At least 25 years. So, that is, I've never thought of Santa Perversa as being the bridge, but you're right. She definitely was the one that broke the door open. When I get to perform that piece, I'll take a piece of my heart, it becomes something really special. And, the dress itself has its own energy and its own quality. But to answer the question of how to open up to that connection, I think first and foremost is to stop doubting yourself. And secondly, it would be, I wouldn't say trust. That's a little harder, but I would say to stop asking permission to connect. And let me clarify that a little bit. Yes, you do need to definitely ask permission when you're connected with other beings, and like, having that rapport and cultivating that. But it's not like, let me set up my altar, whether it's ancestral veneration or to a particular guide or whatnot. It's not like, let me set up the altar and now, like, I'm able to get on call with them.
Yeah.
It is, though, that when you are getting those nudges, and the nudge won't stop. I think that's a good sign. The nudge won't
Mm,
stop.
yes.
It's going to show up in different ways, but it won't stop. And that's actually a moment to just kind of sit with us like, okay, what is this? And just even asking that question, what is this? Not in a judgment, but in a curious, open way. What is this? That is going to start opening up this exploration. And I think also, in terms of like the permission aspect, it's giving yourself permission to be messy, because we're so fixated that it needs to come out, quote unquote, right or perfect right from the get. How can it if you've never done it? How can it if you've never done it? Um, you have to work at your craft. And that would be the third thing is, if you're going to listen to the nudge and you're going to follow through, be consistent at working at your craft. And, the fact that maybe for me, I've been writing, that I had not been writing, quote unquote, creatively, doesn't mean that I stopped writing. I was
Right.
still at my craft. It just looked differently, right?
Yeah.
And so that experience of now understanding that some energy like Santa Perversa, and yeah, I mean, at that point in time in my life, I was trying to figure out, well, what does dating look like? Can we change this up a little bit, please? And so, yeah, I possibly did conjure her. It's like, okay, I need some help here. But in all seriousness, for me, understanding that these are that each one of us has a different connection, and we're gonna pick up on things based on the channel that is the strongest. And so all of us have that capacity, that we keep denying it, negating it, mistrusting it, maybe because at some point in our life, we were told, don't listen to that. Or we were told to doubt that what we were listening to was actually true, right? And so then it takes some time to kind of excavate and remove some of that patterning. But nevertheless, once you get that nudge and once you listen, I also encourage you, ask questions. Who are you? Are you here for my best good? If you're not, bye bye. But we can ask questions, right? That was something I was not aware of before. But we can ask
Mm,
questions. We
right.
can check in. And for me, receiving the energetic attunement of the 13th octave Lao Chi 5 years ago, it opened up this whole ability that I didn't know I had within me. And connecting to angels or my guides and really feeling comfortable, like, oh, yes, this isn't my energy. Let me see what this is. Let's have a conversation. Let's get to know each other. That has been a practice that I've definitely cultivated more. But I didn't have someone to say, okay, well, this is what you do. These are the ABCs of that. And even if I, myself from 5 years ago, if I would look at myself now, I would probably roll my eyes. I'd be like, oh my God, are you serious?
I'm curious when you bring that up, and like, do you feel like is that like part of the way that you were like taught to doubt, or that you like, weren't open at that time to that ability or the connection? Like, I'm curious about that like shift that you witnessed in yourself.
I definitely doubted the ability. The connection, I didn't doubt
Yeah.
because I grew up in, a Christian home.
So,
I mean, that's that's like rule one, right? If you're gonna pray to a God, you
yeah.
gotta believe that the God's gonna answer, right? So that was there already as a process. Like that was already something within me. But I think opening up to my guides and my ancestors and also understanding what are the best ways to sustain that communication were very helpful things that I learned from practitioners like from Caitlin
Yeah.
Grania and of Mother of the Mystics, right? Or even Asia Dajur, a spirit coach.
Yeah.
And so, there were still moments where like baby practitioner, so to speak, was I was still seeking um and understanding. And so, yeah, definitely find your guides and your teachers. And when you're ready, they're going to show up. You're going to see something that says, hey, look here. And you're like, oh, look at that. All right. It
Yeah.
does happen. It does happen. But also not to get into this thought process that you have to pay your dues, so to speak. Right. Because I
Right.
think, again, the social makeup that we grew up, that most of us grew up in, often has this unconscious belief that we have to pay our dues in order to deserve to connect, and that is not the case.
Yeah. And I think that goes going back to what you were saying earlier of it is important to be in relationship and to ask for permission, and at the same time to not feel this barrier, right? That we can't enter into connection, or that we can't open up to these abilities. And yeah, I'm just like really struck with how you shared that there was that nudge. And I'm really very aware of those nudges, those moments where things come knocking, and they usually are persistent, and they usually show up in different ways. And also that you received support, that you went out and you got some support. And as you named, this attunement really allowed you to then be more in tune, or to feel more into those subtle energy shifts when you're connecting with angels or with guides, with ancestors. And so like really wanting to, recommend that for folks who do get that nudge, that there are people out there who will help you, who will support you, who will guide you. And that's also something for you to be open to, and to see if they also show up. And I'm curious for you, like how the folks that supported you, how they showed up. Was it also part of the nudge, or like how did you find the folks that supported you with your own journey?
Oh, wow. Well, at the time where you could really find folks on Instagram, and it
Yeah.
was, to your benefit, Asia was one of the first ones that I found that I met. And curiously enough, at the time we were living in the same city. So it was wonderful. But I wasn't like over her house all the time. No, like
Yeah. Yeah.
found her and I would go attend workshops. And then again, during the pandemic, everything went virtual. So then I was able to really, be in different circles with her and just learning different like abilities or skills or techniques to use to open up those channels. And then with Caitlin, you know, we were at the same event, the same pop up, and we just connected. And it was great. And I think that was like her first time setting up at a pop up. And I ended up being like one of the first people who she like read for. And I was like, wow, that is so cool. But it's been this beautiful friendship that's like emerged. And then other practitioners that I learned with through Spirit House Collective, like Seiwan O of Sun Song, and
Yeah.
now she has her program called Seer, and I've been with her for 5 years, and that's been like amazing. Where we tune into flower essences and then just receive the insight and the information, and so I can see like my trajectory of 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 opening up this channel,
Yeah.
that it's allowed me to connect with our crystal allies and our plant allies. And so I think of the three of them, the one I've been with most consistently is Say One, because we meet every month and we've been doing it for 5 years in her program Seer. And it's amazing, like what comes through and how it comes through, and the connection. And what I receive is also understanding that it's not for me to determine how it should come through. And I say that because we can get really quick into censoring. And nope, that's not for me to set. So again, I can ask questions. I can, ask for clarification. I can continue that conversation. But, being in those spaces, and then even, at the time when they was here in Los Angeles, mostly angels with Julian Zambrano,
Mm-hmm.
um, him inviting me to read tarot on the fly. Oh my gosh, I would never have thought I could do that. And then they're like, come on, IG Live, let's do this. So it's like, okay. So we were doing it, right? And so I
Yeah.
feel like most of my experiences, and this includes like performance art with my friend Pat Payne, who really she's like an older sister to me, a dear friend, but she's really the first person who I saw do amazing. I mean, they're incredible artists, poet, performance artist, visual artist, but also had this intuitive ability who I'd never met anyone who had that, or who was open about that, I should say.
Yeah.
And when we met was literally at the start of my journey of presenting myself as an artist, as a poet. And I mentioned Pat because I feel like I was thrown in the deep end when it came to performance art. And Pat was there. It's like, okay, go do it. And I feel like that's how it's been. I get thrown in the deep end. It's like, all right, go do it. I mean, you figure out how to tread water, but
Yeah.
that's just been how it's worked out for me. I jump into the deep end and it's like, okay, I figure it out.
Yeah, I really love the courage, the trust, the way that you like dive into something and then you witness how it wants to show up or how it wants to unfold as you like step into it. And I definitely know that as an artist that it is so important to be open, right? To be open to what wants to happen, knowing that we often come with a vision of what we want, and then the process starts to inform us. And that to me really also speaks to that like knocking too, because I think thing that's happened in my own work as like a therapist, for example, is there have been many times in sessions when I'm with people and that knock comes and it starts to tell me to say something. And I'm like, this has nothing to do with what we're talking about. Or like, I have no idea why this is here. But I've learned to trust that whenever I bring it in, there is something that really needed to be said, or there's a message coming from either an ancestor or a part of someone. And I think that like ability to really trust and process is something that artists and healers and intuitives really start to hone in their lives, because we start to learn that even if it might feel like something that we want to censor or that doesn't make sense, it lands and then it actually shows us why it showed up, right? It lets us see when we're able to be brave and like courageous and bring it in. And so I'm just really glad you bringing this up and really showing how that has shown up in many different aspects of your practice. And one thing that I really admire about you, Reina, is that you show up in so many different ways. And I think I'm obviously similar to you, where I feel like you have so many different kinds of ways that your creativity show up. And I'd love for you to highlight some of them. I know, like, for example, I was just so excited to hear about your new podcast, Rooted in Love, and love for you to share about that and maybe some of the other ways that you show up too.
Yes, thank you so much. Well, I feel like maybe because we're air signs, like it's easy to be like
Totally.
different ways. But nevertheless, yes, I'm so excited. I revamped my podcast and I retitled it Rooted in Love. And you can listen to it on Spotify, which I'm so excited. I want to say I almost took maybe a year and a half off from recording. And it felt so daunting to record. There was a moment where I was like, oh, but I think of it also that just my focus was starting to shift because I had been also during that time getting practitioner training going and establishing my school. And so I feel like, it was a redirect.
Yeah.
And so now it's like, okay, now I'm ready. I'm ready to also be more vocal, so to speak, and really using that gift to share work. And so Rooted in Love is as it says, to just really guide folks to feel that deep connection or a deeper connection with themselves, to trust that. And so for me, it's just really exploring things that show up as different, maybe obstacles, but also just ways that we could just tend to our well-being and give us that apapacho that we need, that really deep soul level hug, and addressing things about popular culture, which I love. I used to teach visual culture and pop culture, so that still is going to seep in the episodes. And the other way that that's really been attending to my focus is also the practitioner training of SAID, which stands for Shamanic Elements and Reiki. And I've never stopped teaching. That was a college
Right.
professor. I never stopped teaching. I still share work. And so I'm really excited about the practitioner training, also just being open to letting it evolve as it's wanting to. Like the first time I presented it, I did it in such a condensed amount of time. And I realized, oh no, practitioners need more time to integrate. So then we spread it out a little bit. So now it's a 6-month training, but folks can enter or participate at any level, depending what's resonating with them. Because everyone has different skill set. Everyone's at a different place. We talked about the medicine wheel. Everyone's coming in at a different place. So what gift, what skill set do you want to deepen or amplify? And so there's different offerings that are coming through that. But it feels really complete and comprehensive. Like I'm really happy where it's come to. And, speaking of the channeling, like some of that content are these ancestral ways of doing things that I wasn't taught personally by someone in my lifetime, but has come through, channeled ways through my ancestors, through my guides. It's like, okay, this is what we're doing. Okay, this is what it looks like. And, I still can be very sassy with them. And they're like, no, this is, I need you to do it like this. And I was like, okay, I will, but I still don't get it, and so there's still that part of me that will rebel a little bit. And, but I'm also excited about how, some of this process that we've been talking about here is going to show up in the book projects. It's so interesting to see things that I've written years ago, even decades ago, and seeing, is this still true to me today? And, how can I still have a part of me in that? Because some things shift, some things change. And then I also find comfort in the work of Audre Lorde and how they rewrote a poem like 5 or 10 times. It was the same title. I'm like, yeah, I could do that too. Okay, we're good.
Yeah, and I'm curious, like, with you bringing in said, as you mentioned, it's like for folks at, different like needs or different like levels, different places in their path. But I'm curious, like, yeah, like who are you envisioning joining said in case there is someone listening and they're
Yeah,
maybe interested in joining?
totally. This is great for a holistic energy practitioner or someone who's wanting to start on that path, but even someone who's already, had attunements in different modalities and are wanting to integrate ancestral practices, indigenous practices, because I share one way, but really the premise is for you to find your lineage and integrate your lineage into this, right? So it's
Yeah.
very adaptable. But the attunements come at each level, and there's also self-paced content. So it's really for the practitioner who's wanting to integrate more of those ancestral practices
Yeah.
with their holistic
Wonderful. Yeah.
practice.
Great. That's good to know. Yeah, no, we'll definitely put some links here in the show notes and in the description of the video, because this is both going to be on YouTube as well as in a podcast form. So just want to let folks know that you'll find that information. And I know we haven't talked about this, but I also know that you make kitchen witchery in making
Yeah.
food. And I'm curious if you'd like to talk a little bit about that, because that's also something I really love and admire about your work too.
Yeah. So how this all started was through my brand, Good Mexican Girl, and she's actually a character that I performed. And the performance, the Good Mexican Girl, was a woman of a certain age, Virginia Buenaventura, and she all of a sudden gets very flustered because she has a new tenant in her boarding home. And she doesn't know what that is. So if think of like I Love Lucy mixed with like the innocence of someone who's like doesn't know what sex is.
Yeah.
And you get this Good Mexican Girl. And so that came from lived experience. I was caring for my mother after surgery, and I had been living in DC, finishing a dissertation fellowship and staying a few years after finishing that, and just like really loving living in DC. It was wonderful. And, I came home to tend to my mother. And, there was a moment where, I'm like taking care of her, making her meals, bathing her, and we're sitting at the kitchen table. And I just had this thought of like, oh my God, how did I become this good Mexican girl? Because hello, Santa Perversa was like, my model. I'm like,
Right.
what happened? And this moment of what happened. And so from that, it was really just having fun with that notion of good Mexican girl. And when I decided to launch, it was really at the encouragement of folks who are like, we want your cookies. I was like, all right, cool, I'll make them. And again, I had no idea what that looked like, what that entailed like, but I was so blessed that the timing of it coincided with new legislation that passed in California where we could, have a cottage license. And
Yeah.
that's what opened the door for me. And so Good Mexican Girl has just turned 13 years old. She's a teenager now. And it's vegan bakes, vegan empanadas, and we've expanded our flavors, but they're all Mexican inspired flavors. And I'm so excited because literally on the new moon, I finally crafted my vegan dulce de leche cookie, and I'm
Oh,
so excited. I mean, dulce
oh
de
my
leche
goodness.
was our first year anniversary cookie, and I haven't been able to make it vegan because I just didn't like the texture or what it looked like. And so finally came to that. But other key like favorites, like the rosewater pistachio, that came through a dream. That was a dream. That was
I
literally
love that.
the recipe came in a dream. And I was like, okay, we're making this. And it's been a hit ever since. Yeah. So, again, listening to those nudges, right? How they come.
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
makes
and going with it, right? And yeah, and I'm just like really grateful to hear this backstory, and I just also want to say that I was able to get some of your vegan pan muerto when it was available, and
Yes.
my ancestors loved it. So just thank you so much for the work that you make in so many different ways. Like, it is so inspiring to just hear of, like, from performance to writing to, sacred offerings, making food. Like, there's so many ways that your creativity and your connection with your ancestors and your guides really shows up in the world. And, with that said, I'm like curious, like, if you would like to let people know how they can connect with you, how they can best get in touch with you, and how they can work with you.
Absolutely. It's been an honor to be with you and have this conversation with you. And thank you for taking me down memory lane. Best ways to connect with me are through my website, so healingqueen.org. And all the links on how to work with me are there. And also information on the school, Healing Queen, School of Sacred Alchemy, and the program SAID and other trainings that I do. And then through goodmexicangirl.com is the website for the food business. And the best way to just follow up with me is follow me on Instagram at Good Mexican Girl or at Healing Queen with an underscore at the end.
Wonderful. Yay. Well, thank you so much, Reina, for being here. It has been such a joy to connect with you and to go down memory lane with you. And again, I'm so excited to share about you and all the many, many ways that you should support our communities on this podcast. And you definitely embody how your art has been a spell and how it's changed your life and the lives of so many people around you. So just thank you so much for being on this podcast with me.
Thank you. Blessings.
That was such an incredible conversation that we just had with Reina, Healing Queen, Good Mexican Girl, Santa Perversa. Reina shows up in such a multi-dimensional variety of ways, and I'm just really struck by how Reina allows herself the freedom to really explore, expand, experiment, to try things out. I'm just so inspired by the many ways that Reina shows up in the world. And I really want to highlight something from the conversation that I'm sitting with is that nudge, that knocking that happens. I actually learned something about that in my therapy training. And it's like a way that I bring it into sessions when I work with people. And what that is if something comes knocking once, you listen to it, you notice it. If it comes back again, you notice it again. And if it knocks a third time, or even more, so 3 or more times, you bring it into the session no matter what. And that has really, really tested me and also really been deeply, deeply transformative in my practice. And so I've also brought that into my artwork as well, is when I get a vision, when something wants to happen, I bring it in. I let it come into my work. And so I really want you to notice when you get those little knocks that come. And they can come as like visions in your third eye. They can be words that get shared with you. They could be a knowing, or it could be an animal, a plant ally that comes and shares a message. There's so many ways that these knocks can come into our lives. And I think it's really important for us to notice when those knocks are here. And so be open to those visitations, and also be open to things taking a variety of forms and perhaps even surprising you. Thank you so much again, Reina, for being on Your Art is a Spell. And I wanted to say that I will be sending out a Q&A soon for a future episode that I'm going to be doing on this season, where I'm going to be answering your questions around art practice, spirituality, becoming a professional working witch, all the different ways that I show up in the world. I want to open up and have like a Q&A with folks on my newsletter. So if you're not on my newsletter, this is your invitation to get on there. And you can get there by going to yourartisaspell.com and signing up. It is the best way to stay in touch with me and to get updates about all the things that I'm doing in the world and the many ways that I'm showing up, as well as to be able to offer feedback I also have a speak pipe, so if you feel like sharing a voice message on the episode I did with Jeff Hinshaw, which is episode 2, you could hear a voice message from someone on my newsletter. So I just want to invite you, if you are wanting to share your voice, you can go to speakpipe.com/yourartisaspell. So those are the 2 ways that you can send in your questions, either through my newsletter when I ask for Q&A questions, or you can also send in a message via SpeakPipe. Okay, that's all for now. Remember, your art is a spell and it will change your life and the world around you. See you soon.